Hello and thank you all for joining us. You're watching Addis News Hour. My name is Tabitha John and these are the day's news. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has recognized best performing artists today in a special event organized at Ndoto Park, Addis Ababa. Quote, Ethiopia thanks you for your service, said the premier on the recognition ceremony. Long-serving artists from several genres have taken part in the recognition ceremony, where best performers have received award medals from the Prime Minister. Elite artists have also received award medals from Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. The award and recognition is attributed to contributions, long and active services, popular acceptance, and age of the artists above 60. All the artists awarded are alive. Theater, film, painting, and sculpture are the genres in which the awardees have participated. It is to be recalled that the latest round of talks between Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan over the GERD broke down on Tuesday. Sudan and Egypt have continued to undermine the AU-led negotiation process, says Seleshi Bekele, Ethiopia's water minister. Although Ethiopia took part in the meetings with the goal of seeking to find some common ground, Egypt has come up with a false accusation that Ethiopia had a, quote, lack of political will to negotiate in good faith. Hosted by the Democratic Republic of Congo DRC in Kinshasa, the meeting between the three countries' foreign ministries began on Sunday and were extended into a third day on Tuesday. Emmanuel Jorge takes us through the events.
To further complicate proceedings, a Congolese mediator said Sudan had objected to the terms of a draft communique, news agency AFP reported. Ethiopia and Egypt accepted the terms contained in the final draft communique. But Sudan felt that its interests in the Nile River were at threat, the DRC source who spoke on condition of anonymity told the AFP. Delegations from the three countries were hoping to find a breakthrough in negotiations over a project Ethiopia says is a key to its economic development. Egypt has been telling lies that the dam will endanger its supplies of Nile water, while Sudan says it is concerned about the dam's safety and water flows through its own dams and water stations. Egypt had said this latest meeting represented the last chance to restart negotiations before Ethiopia begins to fill the dam for the second year in a row after seasonal rains begin this summer. Ahead of the latest round of talks, Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said there would be inconceivable instability in the region if his country's water supply were affected by the dam. The Nile, the world's longest river by some people's calculation and one of the two longest by anybody's, remains crucial to keeping Africa fed and watered. Roughly 19 in 20 Egyptians live within a few kilometers of the river's banks and rely on its water. While Ethiopia supported the draft communique submitted by the chairperson of the AU with a minor adjustment, Egypt and Sudan rejected it. The two countries demanded the role of observers to replace that of the three countries and the AU. It said Ethiopia's resolve to reach a settlement on the first filling and related operations of the dam failed to be resolved due to the rigid stance taken by Egypt and the Sudan. The two nations, it said, wanted to make the negotiation and the outcome a tool to affirm their self-claimed water share and foreclose Ethiopia's share. The statement underlined that Ethiopia will undertake the second filling of the GERD as scheduled. Sudan and Egypt agreed on a proposal to include the European Union, the United States and the United Nations in the talks, as well as African Union mediators. But Egypt falsely accused Ethiopia of rejecting the proposal during the meeting, as well as other suggestions to restart negotiations. Sudan is also in the midst of a border dispute with Ethiopia. Ethiopia has expressed its enormous respect for the role played by the President of the Republic of Congo, Felix Tshisekedi, and Chair of the AU for hosting the meeting.
The negotiations over the $4 billion GERD held in Kinshasa, DR Congo, concluded on Tuesday without a deal being reached because Sudan came up with a proposal to include international mediators in the talks. This is supported by Egypt, while Ethiopia rejected it. Ethiopia has made it clear that the attempt by the Sudan and Egypt to include the United States, European Union, and the UN as mediators is meant to undermine the AU-led process. And now now, to further elaborate on this, we have Yilma Seleshi, a member of the negotiating team, on the phone to walk us through the deliberate moves being made by Egypt and the Sudan to stall the negotiations. Thank you for being with us, Yilma.
Thank you for inviting me.
So my first question for you this evening is that Ethiopia has said that the attempt to include the US, EU, and the UN in the negotiation process is an attempt to undermine the AU-led process. And they said that it also reveals Ethiopia's lack of political will to negotiate in good faith. What's your take on that?
Yes, they are saying in that direction. But, the three countries already agreed to continue negotiation under African Union auspices. So there is no need in the middle of the negotiation to move to another quartet negotiation style where from observer status they move to mediator status. Even the African Union role is facilitation. It is not mediation. But what they are asking is a mediation role for the four entities. So that's why Ethiopia insisted we stay on course on what we already agreed, and we continue negotiation.
Very good. So, similarly, Sudan's foreign minister accused Ethiopia of making unilateral moves over the dam, adding that this is a clear violation of international law. Why are they twisting the facts here and making it look like they have the political will to negotiate in good faith?
In fact, this is a very surprising statement. In the last 40 and 15 years, both Sudan and Egypt have been developing unilaterally without discussing with Ethiopia on a common Nile water. So unilateralism have been there for long time. But Ethiopia instead invited them to discuss about GERD. This is not at all unilateralism. We are discussing, negotiating, and basically we have agreed on the filling schedules, stage-based filling schedules. The first year without any condition, and on the second year, if there is a drought, there is a condition on that. We completely agreed on that. And the third and the fourth years, there are some conditions which we have not agreed totally with them. So the filling aspect is more or less progressing very well. So this is not unilateralism. This is cooperation. So their statement is not really based on facts.
Okay, so how should Ethiopia proceed in this? Could engaging more with other riparian countries be an option in this regard to straighten the situation?
You see, the Blue Nile is mainly concerning Egypt and Sudan directly, the water course itself. But the Nile as a whole, yes, the other upper riparian countries may join the discussion, but still the Nile Basin Initiative discourse is there. We can have also discussion in that forum. But this is relevant directly with the three countries at this moment.
Okay, and my last question, Egypt's Sisi is still threatening that if a single drop of the Nile water is touched, that there will be serious consequences, that there will be a great instability in the Horn region. Isn't that a clear violation of the spirit of cooperation?
Yeah, I mean, they are setting Egypt water. We are not sure which water, because this is also Ethiopia water, Sudanese water, in particular when you talk about Blue Nile. So Ethiopia has also water, Egypt has also water, Sudan. So we use our water, our share. I cannot see that statement because it is not very explicit. We understand Nile is very important to Egypt and Sudan, but it's also very important to Ethiopia. We agreed on this in Declaration of Principle. It is a vital resource for the three countries. So,
all right, Professor Yilma Seleshi, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
The latest round of talks held between Sudan, Egypt, and Ethiopia from 4th to 5th of April in Kinshasa has ended without agreement. Briefing journalists on Wednesday about the failed negotiation, Minister of Water, Irrigation and Energy Seleshi Bakala accused Sudan and Egypt of interrupting the talks with their unrealistic proposals. The minister confirmed Ethiopia's firm stance to proceed with the second phase of filling of the GERD as per schedule, despite a persistent impasse with downstream countries. Alula Teklamariam reports.
It is the first time for Ethiopia, Sudan and Egypt to physically meet in Kinshasa, DRC, since the outbreak of coronavirus in the continent. However, the three-day talks mediated by the African Union ended with no progress as Egypt and Sudan wanted an elevated role of international mediators in the process. The downstream countries also want a trilateral agreement on the dam's operations to be reached before reservoir filling began, where Ethiopia says filling is a natural part of the dam's construction and is thus impossible to postpone.
Unfortunately, this thing, even in this negotiation, it is similar behavior. The last 7 meetings, the negotiations were interrupted by calling for change of format, do this, do that, without focusing on what we have agreed. None of them were interrupted by Ethiopia. None of the previous 7 meetings were interrupted by Ethiopia.
The minister expressed Ethiopia's firm stance on ways of maintaining the enhanced role of international observers like South Africa, United States of America, and the European Union in the GERD negotiations to be facilitated by the African Union.
So we recognize our 3 observers, the United States of America, European Union, and South Africa. We agreed to enhance the role of the observers because we are the ones who have selected them. That enhancement of the role is, for example, when we have serious disagreement on issue and we cannot solve it by our discussion of the 3 party, we can pick that issue and request the observer to find for us a solution for our consideration. That is an enhancement of the role compared to the previous one.
Despite the disagreements with the downstream countries, Ethiopia would not be deterred from proceeding with the second phase of filling the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam in the coming rainy season.
On second year filling also it's very clear it has nothing to do with anything. As construction progresses, filling takes place. This is our commonly agreed declaration of principle. We don't deviate from that at all. We don't also deviate from what we have put in our documents. The 3 countries have agreed on stage-based filling with defined quantity, 13.5 is the second year, and that time period is during the rainy season when we have a lot of flood, a lot of water in the rivers, where nobody will be harmed, because of capturing of that water.
Seleshi said Ethiopia is always committed to share data with the downstream countries regarding the second filling this rainy season.
Meanwhile, Minister of Water, Irrigation and Energy Seleshi Bakala said Ethiopia's intention in the trilateral GERD talk was to discuss new roadmaps and ways to data sharing regarding the second filling of the dam. That was designed on regional integration and a win-win approach to use the Nile River in equitable and reasonable manner, according to the minister. However, he said Egypt and the Sudan stuck to a legal binding agreement. Take a listen to him.
The roadmap to the next phases of negotiation towards concluding rules and guidelines for filling and operation guideline agreement. That was the ultimate goal. So for that, then the roadmap need to be created, and also ultimately to bring out joint communique. So within that, during the opening, our Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister made very clear statements and reflected interests of Ethiopia, where Ethiopia is really committed to continue the negotiation and also complete the rules and guidelines agreement. And the principled basis for Ethiopia's negotiation towards the utilization of the Nile, and also specifically on the GERD issue, to utilize a resource we have collectively in the Nile Basin in equitable and reasonable manner without causing significant harm to any party. So the approach should be a win-win, and the GERD provides a real opportunity for integration of our economy, developing the region, providing huge benefit to Ethiopia by creating access to electricity for the 65 million people who live in darkness, and also a real opportunity to bring new paradigm shift in the system. And he also emphasized the idea of utilizing or dominating the utilization of Nile only by the two countries that, in a sense, exclusively utilize the entire water is not the 21st century idea, so it doesn't lead us to any win-win solutions. Therefore, we have to work together as partners.
Seleshi also underscored that the DRC proposed 9 communiques for discussion, of which they agreed only on 3 common denominators.
DRC proposed 9 communique items. We only have had minor comments on 2 issues, communique number 4 and 7, and the rest we have accepted as they are. It's natural, whatever is drafted. For when technical people review, they may see some wording, change of wordings, adjustment of wordings, and when this communique has a meaning that is difficult to understand or will create controversy, adjustment by technical expert is a natural process. So in that tune, we only made minor adjustment on the chair's communique, but from other parties, a lot of red and green mappings were created. Some of them are certain things we haven't even raised in that negotiation, certain things that we have concluded, like the enhanced role of the observers and who they are, etc., were again changed and brought into the communique. We couldn't agree on this issue. And the role of the AU, also the AU chair, is also again challenged in the proposal. Of course, any country can propose its views, but a communique has to reflect the real essence and what we have agreed. And it can be registered by difference if necessary, but that didn't happen. So ultimately, we were about to agree on most of them, but a new proposition was created by one of the members, not by Ethiopia, which fully has a lot of problems. One example is putting an ultimatum when the conclusion of the agreement should be. For that to say in the communique, we have to first, have the roadmap, clear roadmap. Without having a roadmap, putting something we haven't discussed, that we haven't envisaged that we complete within 8 weeks, is not useful part of the communique.
Replying to Egypt and Sudan's attempt of trying to use Ethiopia's internal political situation for their own benefit, a renowned Ethiopian author and political analyst, Yassin Ahmed, disapproved the possibility of such events deterring Ethiopia from finalizing its mega dam. Listen to him.
للاسف الشديد يعني ما هذا ما نراه الان. الاعلام المصري يعني حتى ايضا بعد المسؤولين المصريين يحاولون عندما يتكلمون عن صد النهضه.
The worst thing is that, as we always see, the Egyptian media, including the government officials, talk Ethiopia's internal affairs toward construction. Egypt's daily agenda is Ethiopia's internal affairs. We strictly oppose Egypt's and Sudan's interference against Ethiopia's internal affairs. Another evil act of Egypt is aggravating Ethiopia-Sudan border issue. Egypt instigated Sudan to undertake joint military training to intimidate Ethiopia. But Ethiopia will fill the dam for the second time. As Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Dammaqe Mokonnon said, no force will stop Ethiopia from filling the dam.
أول والثاني كل هذه حقيقة محاولات.
He also underscored that any option other than peaceful negotiations among the three countries is unacceptable and impacts the GERD talks.
أنا أقول يعني الخيار العسكري ليس وارد.
War will not happen because of GERD with two reasons. First, the dam will not have significant harm to Sudan and Egypt. Secondly, Egypt will not opt military action because the Gulf region and the Horn African countries have good relationship with Ethiopia. Superpowers like Russia, China, France, Britain, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia and Turkey see the GERD positively for regional integration and its role to help Ethiopians to extricate from poverty.
Tech giant Facebook says that it has removed more than a dozen accounts and pages from Facebook and Instagram from Egypt that targeted Ethiopia, Sudan, and Turkey. The company announced the removal of 17 Facebook accounts, 6 pages, and 3 Instagram accounts from Egypt that targeted Ethiopia, Sudan, and Turkey. We found this network as part of our internal investigation and linked it to Be Interactive, a marketing firm in Egypt, the social media company said. It said the pages had violated Facebook policy against foreign interference and had been involved in coordinated inauthentic behavior. The accounts have shared stories in the Amharic language, which is widely spoken in Ethiopia. The content includes criticism of the massive dam that Ethiopia has built on a tributary of the Nile River, as well as Turkey's foreign policy, while sharing, quote, positive commentaries about Egypt, Facebook said. The pages have combined followers of more than 300,000 and appear to have some form of engagement from Ethiopia.
leerkan waxaa fuliyay xafiiskayga waxaa fuliyay wakaalada bacdiga naafada leerkan wuxuu hal abuur ka dhashay dhalinyaradii ka qalin jibisay TV'ka maamulka magaalada Gaxbuur ama kulliyadda farsamada xirfadaha ee maamulka magaalada Gaxbuur waxaa dhacday in iyagu macnaha sanadkii hore waxaan fulinay 3 kiiloomitir oo leerka sirideedka iyagoo macnaha kaashanaya fikirkooda iyo macnaha aaladan cusub iyo siyaasiyadan cusub iyo macnaha
waxaa ka mid ahaa ninka jiray dadku inay ka noqdaan meelaha koonaha kale yidhahan meesha bajaajyo ma jirto malaha wayna arki waayaan ee galaamida ruuxa taagan baan arkayo halkaa naga soo baxay.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs said in a statement that international media have been busy reporting crimes of all sorts of nature in the state of Tigray since the beginning of the law enforcement operation in the state, recalling that this operation followed the unwarranted and surprise attack by the TPLF clique on the members of the Northern Command of the Ethiopian Defense Force on 4th November 2020. The statement further underscored that it leaves no stone unturned to expose the truth to the whole world. Ethiopia believes that it has to set the record straight on slanted reports that continue to portray the federal government as an instigator of all crimes, while the belligerent TPLF appears to be the underdog that happens to be at the receiving ends of the alleged atrocities and human rights violations in the region. Niman Osman has the rest of the statement as follows.
The government of Ethiopia urges that the international community not to be easily swayed by the propaganda campaign of TPLF clique and its sympathizers, including the international media that tend to whitewash the crimes of the clique that has a track record of committing ineffable atrocities on Ethiopians for more than 3 decades. It should not also be forgotten that the government of Ethiopia has been dealing with a criminal enterprise that had been armed on its teeth, and it would be naive to rule out the possibilities of civilians casualties during the rule of law operations in the region. As we have repeatedly said, undesirable things might occur when dealing with a group that does not hesitate to use civilians as human shields and their household as hideouts. The government of Ethiopia once again is deeply dismayed by the deaths of civilians and the unfortunate circumstances that led them to endure unbearable situations. The government has a policy of zero tolerance for human rights violation and is committed to holding into account whosoever is involved in the alleged rights violations. The recent agreements between the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission and the UN to run a joint investigation on alleged human rights violations in the region is a manifestation of Ethiopian federal government's devotion to taking the matter seriously. Unfortunately, the international community has continued to be bombarded by biased reports that do not cooperate with the facts on the ground. Selective perceptions of news reports and journalists who have continued to observe things through colored glasses taint news outputs that often tend to find the federal government of Ethiopia as usual suspect for all the allegedly committed human rights violation in the Tigray region. All the rush to accuse the government even tends to overshadow the well-substantiated crime committed against humanity by the TPLF clique on the innocent civilians of Maikara town. The problem with TPLF is not just in imitating the crime, but it is resolved to twist the truth and construct stories through doctored footage in a bid to continue misinforming the world. And the sad thing is that the international media has been readily picking such products of the clique without giving second thoughts while pretending to fail a notice of the clique's wrongs. To make matters worse, TPLF has staunch and punk-rolled accomplices who are self-acclaimed gurus on matters of the Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa. The international community will understand the matter at hand objectively by applying a rudimentary level of logical reasoning, hiding the fact that the concerted disinformation campaign by the international media on Ethiopia cannot be passes for the reality on the ground. This understanding ensures that investigations on the credibility and scope of allegations in the region should be substantiated by independent bodies and not by simply relying on the mere accusatory reports of the news agencies. Putting the all blame for the alleged crimes on the Ethiopian government and turning a blind eye of the misdeeds of TPLF that continue to blame the victim will not be a feeble way to give a justice to affected people. Acknowledging the initiatives to run independent investigation of the alleged human rights violation in the region could not be the first step to take, holding the irresponsible TPLF clique that has continued to urge the people of Tigray to continue fighting for meaningless causes accountable for the sufferings it has caused and the human rights violation it has continued to commit in the region is another step to take a genuine concern to ease up the suffering of civilians.
Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Demeke Mekonnen has conferred with Foreign Affairs Minister of Denmark, Jaap Kofod, via telephone on the latest developments in Ethiopia. In a telephone conversation, Deputy Prime Minister Demeke told the Danish Foreign Minister that the government of Ethiopia has delivered humanitarian assistance to 4.5 million people in need in Tigray region, adding that the second round support has so far commenced in the area. Except for a few areas, almost many of the places that encountered humanitarian need have been accessed through the aid drive, Demeke added. Ethiopian Human Rights Commission and the UN Human Rights have finalized preparations to start joint examinations into alleged atrocities in the region. Demeke also assured the Danish minister that discussions have been held on withdrawal of Eritrean troops from the region. Ethiopia proceeds with better preparations to make the upcoming elections democratic, free and fair, and international stakeholders, including the EU, have been invited to observe the polling, he explained. And finally, the recently released video, which shows atrocities on innocent civilians in Tigray, is a complete fabrication and drama orchestrated by agents of the TPLF junta, according to the Ethiopian National Defense Forces. Briefing the media yesterday, National Defense Force Indoctrination Director Major General Mohammed Tesema said the video was released by agents of the junta with the intention of confusing the general public. According to him, the extremist TPLF group was destroyed once and for all by the law enforcement operation. However, some of the remnants of the junta are now acting as bandits by hiding in forests and robbing as well as killing innocent people in some parts of the region, he revealed. Quote, they have intensified killings of civilians in Tigray. The killings of people they belong to continue. The network is already carrying out acts of violence against the people in all parts of the country. According to the Ethiopian news agency, remnants of the junta have also been doctoring killings carried out by the junta as if committed by the National Defense Forces and disseminating the manipulated videos. You're watching Addis News Hour, a quick reminder of today's stories making headlines. Ethiopia expresses commitment to continue in a spirit of cooperation regarding the GERD. And Ethiopian political analyst disapproves the possibility of war due to the GERD filling. And that's all we had for now. I'm Tabitha Jomei. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.